Caitlin Clark is currently battling through a physical ordeal that would sideline most seasoned pros. But her coach just released a statement that changes the narrative entirely. Stephanie White didn't just mention the alarming back injury. She essentially informed the public that it's Clark's own fault due to her poor body mechanics. The locker room has become a pressure cooker. The defense is a complete disaster, and the culture of finger-pointing has officially spun out of control. We are witnessing a franchise cornerstone fall apart while the leadership shifts blame instead of providing support. This is more than just a loss. It is a full organizational breakdown that began the moment the season tipped off. Everyone noticed the back brace and the heating pads during the preseason, but few wanted to accept that the rumors were this serious. Caitlin finally confessed that she had to have her spine physically realigned just to stay out on the court. It is a frightening situation for a rookie who is expected to be the future of this league. Meanwhile, the medical staff is behaving as if this is just a standard routine. When your star player is struggling just to stand upright, you expect a coach to protect her. Instead, Stephanie White is taking a much different and far more controversial path that has fans absolutely furious right now. Rather than expressing concern, White claimed on the record that these back issues will be a recurring problem because Clark never learned how to move properly. Imagine being the top overall pick and having your coach tell the media your body is failing because you lack basic fundamental movement. It is a cold, strategic move that shifts the focus from coaching failures to the player's physical flaws. This isn't just a simple health update. It is a public critique of Clark's athletic training, and it exposes a significant rift forming behind the scenes in Indiana. The statistics from the Dallas game are beyond embarrassing. They perfectly reflect a team that possesses no identity on the defensive end of the floor. Dallas shot nearly 60% from the field and over 50% from the three-point line, treating the Fever's defense like a simple practice squad. Stephanie White was hired specifically as a defensive expert. However, her squad looked as if they had never practiced a screen or a rotation in their lives. The frustration on the floor was obvious, with players searching the bench for answers that never came, resulting in one of the most lopsided games in recent history. Once the game ended, White didn't analyze her own rotations or her unsuccessful game plan. Instead, she stepped to the microphone and systematically critiqued her roster's effort. She labeled the team as sluggish and undisciplined, highlighting every foul on a jump shooter and every missed assignment as if she had no part in the preparation. It was a masterclass in shifting blame that left fans wondering if she will ever take any responsibility for the low-quality product being put on the court. The coach seems finished with being patient, and the players are the ones caught in the line of fire. Critics are already describing this team as a complete disaster. It is difficult to disagree when you witness the total lack of teamwork. There were points in the fourth quarter where defensive rotations were so messy that players were actually colliding with each other while Dallas walked in for easy layups. You rarely see this level of confusion in professional basketball unless there is a complete breakdown between the coaches and the locker room. White insists the offense is fine, but when your defense is like a sieve, no amount of scoring from Caitlin Clark or Kelsey Mitchell can save the season from catastrophe. Kelsey Mitchell put up 30 points in a massive effort to keep the game competitive, but even her talent was eclipsed by the coaching staff's strange choices. White confessed she likely played Mitchell and Clark too many minutes without rest, essentially exhausting her two stars while the game fell out of reach. It is a shocking admission of poor management that points to a much deeper problem. The coaching staff doesn't seem to have a grasp on the flow of the game. They are reacting to problems rather than preventing them, costing the Fever wins they need to build some momentum. There are reports coming out of total chaos on the sidelines during vital timeouts. At one point, it appeared White was asking her assistants for basic instructions rather than leading the huddle with confidence. If the head coach is unsure of the next play, how can the players be expected to perform under intense pressure? This lack of guidance is trickling down into the team's defensive energy, or lack thereof. You cannot force effort, but you can certainly discourage it by showing a lack of faith in the very systems you are trying to teach on the court. The most unsettling part of White's press conference was her claim that the injury problems aren't just limited to Clark. She mentioned hip and rib issues as if the entire roster is physically crumbling after only one game. This suggests a major failure in the strength and conditioning program or a practice schedule that is doing more damage than good. If the Fever are already facing mechanical breakdowns this early in the year, the path forward looks very dark for a team that was expected to be a playoff contender. For her part, Caitlin Clark is trying to be a team player, saying she felt fast and that a few more made shots would have changed things. But her expression tells a different story than her words. You can see the growing frustration every time she has to stretch her back or wait for a teammate who never arrives. She is carrying the burden of an entire franchise on her back. And right now, that weight is literally causing her body to break down. The positivity she shows in public is a thin cover for the turmoil happening inside that Indiana locker room. White specifically criticized the team's discipline, noting the foolish fouls on shooters as a major reason for the defeat. While she isn't wrong that those are mental mistakes, the regularity of these errors suggests a team that isn't being taught the fundamentals. If your players are constantly fouling in the same spots, it's a failure of the coaching system, not just the athletes. White is quick to identify the symptoms of the problem while totally ignoring the fact that she is the one who should provide the cure. It is a negative cycle that is only getting worse. Even when White attempts to give a compliment, it feels like a backhanded insult. She praised Michaela Simpson for her play in the second half, but made sure to mention how poorly she defended in the first half. It is this constant habit of highlighting player mistakes that is wearing on the roster. Instead of building morale, White seems focused on keeping her players on edge, obsessing over their errors like a dark cloud. This tough love strategy isn't producing results. It is producing a 59% shooting night for the other team. Let's be honest, Dallas didn't just win. They embarrassed Indiana. They got whatever they wanted whenever they wanted because they knew the Fever wouldn't make adjustments. White admitted they didn't use enough double teams and let Dallas players do as they pleased on the perimeter. This isn't just an area for growth. It is a total failure of game preparation. To enter a game and allow the opponent to shoot over 50% from deep is a serious offense in professional sports. Yet, White speaks about it like it's a small detail that will eventually fix itself. White continues to repeat the idea that the offense is probably fine, but that is a dangerous mistake to make. If your offense is okay but you are still losing by double digits, it means your whole philosophy is broken. You cannot outscore pro teams if you refuse to play any defense. Yet, that seems to be the Fever's only strategy. They are counting on Clark and Mitchell to perform miracles while everyone else watches the defense collapse. It is a recipe for a losing year and a frustrated fan base that is already calling for major changes. Clark claimed the locker room stayed positive after the game, but that feels more like PR talk than the truth. How can a team feel good after being torn apart and publicly shamed by their own coach? There is a major gap between the all is well story from the players and the everything is wrong story from Stephanie White. This kind of mixed messaging is exactly how you lose a locker room before the first month of play is even finished. The cracks are appearing and they are widening with every single interview. One of the most obvious issues White mentioned was the transition defense, or the total absence of it. She complained that players were just standing around and not running back, which is essentially calling out their heart. When a coach questions your effort in public, the relationship is usually broken beyond repair. If the players aren't running back for Stephanie White, it's because they don't believe in her message. This team looks drained, not just physically from the injuries, but mentally from the constant stream of criticism. By focusing so much on Clark's mechanics, White has created a perfect excuse for any future losses. If Caitlin plays badly, it's because of her back and her movement. If the team loses, it's because the players aren't disciplined. In White's perspective, she is the only one doing her job while everyone else fails to meet her standards. It is an incredibly prideful stance for a coach whose team just looked like a total mess on national TV. The fans aren't buying it, and soon the front office might not either. Even the talk about the refs turned into a strange critique of the team's focus. White discussed overcorrecting for the new rules, basically blaming the officials for the team's lack of physical defense. It is another example of searching for any excuse instead of looking in the mirror. Great coaches adapt to how a game is called. They don't spend the post-game press conference wishing for different officials. This focus on outside factors is a major warning sign for the future of the Indiana Fever's season. Playing Clark and Mitchell for over 30 minutes in a game that was already lost shows a lack of long-term planning. With Clark already managing back pain that requires realignment, every extra minute is a huge risk. White admitted she kept them in too long, but the harm may already be done. If you break your franchise player in the opening week because you are desperate for one win, you have failed as a leader. The short-term stress is clearly affecting White, and she is taking dangerous risks with her players' health. The irony of this whole situation is that Stephanie White was promoted as the coach who would fix the Fever's defensive problems. Instead, the defense has fallen to a point where it is nearly unwatchable. You can see the players looking lost during every Dallas possession, unsure of who they are supposed to guard. This isn't just a lack of talent, it is a lack of clear direction. When players don't know where to go, they play slow. And when they play slow, they get beat. White's defensive expertise has turned into a nightmare she refuses to take ownership of. Where is the accountability for the coaches? White says that we need to be better, but her examples always highlight a player's error. She never brings up a bad play call, a poor sub, or a failure to change the defense during the game. This gap in accountability is creating a me versus them environment that is toxic for a young squad. The Fever need a leader who will take the heat, not one who uses their rookie star as a shield to protect her own image. This isn't how you create a winning culture. The fans are already finished with this version of Fever basketball, and the season has only just begun. Social media is filled with demands for White to be replaced by someone who wants to build on Clark's strengths rather than criticizing her physical health. The trash description of the team's performance perfectly captures the mood of the fans right now. They were promised a new era with the arrival of Clark, but all they have seen so far is a lesson on how to alienate your stars and lose games without taking any blame. The Indiana Fever are at a crossroads that will shape the next decade of the team. They have a generational talent in Caitlin Clark, but they have a coaching dynamic that is actively hurting her success and her well-being. If Stephanie White continues to blame body mechanics and discipline while ignoring her own faults, this season will be remembered as a massive wasted opportunity. The time for excuses is over, and the need for a real leader is urgent before the injuries and the losses become permanent damage.